Are you feeling optimistic about 2025? The majority of the country aren't.
I'm not feeling very optimistic about the UK. We've got about another 4 years or so of this ghastly Labour government, so I can't really feel very optimistic about that. But things on the international stage are changing. France is almost ungovernable at the moment, so let's see where that goes. We've got federal elections in Germany coming up, and it very much looks like Pierre Poilievre is going to become the Conservative Prime Minister of Canada later this year, and that's not even mentioning the election of Donald Trump. So I think on the international stage, it's looking a lot brighter than it is domestically.
Well, it's really interesting. We were talking earlier about the United States, and obviously Trump has 19 days until he becomes US president. And of course, the impact. I mean, hopefully the UK will be somewhat sheltered from that because, of course, Trump loves the United Kingdom, and we hope we can avoid some of those tariffs if the Labour government swallows its pride and actually does a deal with Trump. But what we are seeing is the Eurozone being hit really hard as well. Investors are betting the euro will hit parity with the dollar because, of course, the Eurozone isn't doing very well. Donald Trump has said he is going to impose tariffs on business coming in from Europe. And many people are saying, or the world's biggest bank, including those people who are saying the euro is the sick man of the G10. Euro weakness is exacerbated by US policy uncertainty.
Yes, and as I touched upon, the Franco-German alliance is what props up the EU, and that is failing completely at the moment. And as you rightly touched on, growth in the EU is roughly half of what it is in the United States. So it's looking particularly bleak in Brussels at the moment.
I think it's fair to say Keir Starmer's had a pretty rocky 6 months, his first 6 months in the job. So this was an opportunity to rephrase his vision for the country. He did a New Year's speech. He talked about this is the year when we gather round, when we're actually going to rebuild this country. In terms of his speech, what did you think of it?
Well, not very much, really. I mean, if you go back to the summer, just a week or two after he was elected, he was basically saying that life is going to be bleak. We got some really bad stuff coming down the road towards you. And sure enough, we got that budget just a couple of months ago. So he's framed the narrative that things can only really get worse before they can get better. And now he's trying to come up with some optimism. He's even trying to use the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War to try and generate some optimism.
I felt that was incredibly disingenuous. The fact
well,
is,
I did as well. Completely disingenuous. I mean, the Labour Party, in many ways, is quite ashamed of our history. It's quite ashamed of what Winston Churchill did. And yet it's now trying to use that and use the sacrifices of that great generation to its own political ends. But then nothing surprises me. I mean, we saw it with Sadiq Khan last night. He has to put a little bit of politics even into something that is supposed to be non-political.
Let's pause, actually. Let's just look at Keir Starmer's New Year's message to the nation, and then we'll dissect it after that. Have a look at this.
Till you can look forward and believe in the promise and the prosperity of Britain again, then this government will fight for you. A fight for change that will define this year, next year, and indeed every waking hour of this government. We have a clear plan for change. 1.5 million new homes, restoring the dream of home ownership. Children starting school ready to learn. A more secure energy system, waiting lists cut dramatically, immigration reduced, neighbourhood police tackling antisocial behaviour in every community, and more cash in your pocket wherever you live.
Everything about that is wrong. He's badly dressed, it's badly framed, it's badly shot, there's no optimism, no vision. Someone said he looks like a geography teacher.
I think you're insulting geography teachers.
Well, I think I am too, yeah.
If you say that. No, you're completely correct. I mean, this is the man who has slashed removed the winter fuel payments from so many pensioners this year, which, of course, was not in the Labour Party manifesto. You look at his attack on the countryside and farmers. You look at Ed Miliband's barking net zero policies that are going to impoverish us. You look at Rachel Reeves' £40 billion worth of tax increases that could push us into recession next year. I mean, as Keir Starmer simply spent too many hours on board aircraft flying around the world for him to actually understand what is actually happening here in the UK.
OK, let's turn to your lot, shall we? Kemi Badenoch, she also gave a New Year message. Let's play hers.
Happy New Year. Like all of you, I am looking forward to a 2025 that is full of hope, security and prosperity. The Conservative Party is also going through a period of change. This process of renewal will be a long-term project. Things may be bumpy along the way, but the party I now lead is going to do things differently. Watch this space.
So again, lots of detractors saying this is all about the Conservative Party. It wasn't about Britain. What did you think?
It seemed like the trailer to a movie. What I'd really like to see now is the movie, because I feel that, you know,
it's not finished.
Well, she's saying that, you know, this is a long-term project. Well, we're going to have 4 years. Look, we've got conservative principles. We can then have conservative positions. Surely that is possible now. I'm not saying that she has to have exact policies because we are so far away from a general election, but we really do need more meat on the bones here. I mean, she must realise that Nigel Farage and Reform are breathing down the Conservative Party's neck. And we've got just now 4 months away, the 1st of May, we've got local elections. I mean, we know that some of them may be cancelled, but there's still going to be a significant amount of local elections right throughout the country. And if Reform do well there, which I probably expect that they will, what's she going to say then? We simply need more meat on the bones. We need more action this day, I think, from Kemi.
OK, so the Conservative Party has 131,680 members. Reform UK now has 160,000 members, so surpassing the Conservative Party. Let's juxtapose those two speeches with Nigel Farage. He chose Blenheim Palace as the backdrop to his New Year's address to the nation. There is no doubt in my mind he has a real sense of the history of this country, and putting that into perspective with where the country needs to be, pushing the country forward to make it brighter. Let's take a look.
The fish rots from the head down. We have been appallingly led in this country now for several decades. We are in societal decline. We are in economic decline. Most people are getting poorer with every year that passes. We're losing any sense of national identity. And we're actually teaching kids at school that people like Winston Churchill, born in this palace, are bad people and that our country's history is something to be ashamed of. It was also because I'd fought so hard and so long for us to get back our independence, Brexit, taking back control of our own lives, and to see that completely squandered by a Conservative Party who frankly never believed in it, but used it for electoral advantage in 2019.
Nigel Farage talking about the country, no mention of reform.
True. And I think his views on the state of the country are rather accurate, aren't they? As opposed to Keir Starmer's, which we just heard of, which just doesn't seem to hold water at all. And, you know, I used the analogy before that Kemi seemed to come up with the trailer and what we want is the movie. I think what we got from Nigel really was the movie. He stated what the problems were and he stated what Reform will do about it. And I think that's what the public wants.
There is a real sense, and certainly from what people are telling me, that actually watching those three speeches separately, that Nigel Farage is the most prime ministerial, talking about the role of the nation. It's nicely shot. The message, I think, is heartfelt. But also when you look at the rise of reform, and you mentioned the local elections there, this is going to be the big test, not just for the Labour Party, but also for the Conservative Party. The Conservatives keep telling me they're doing well in the local elections. Now, also, we need to keep an eye on Wales, I think, particularly on Wales, because that will yield some very interesting results.
Yes, Wales will, and I'm pleased that you mentioned that. And of course, the Conservative Party got rid of its leader, Andrew R.T. Davies, which I think was a huge mistake. just a few weeks ago. So that is going to be interesting. But I think it's going to be a major test for all the political parties. I mean, Labour will perhaps not expect to do particularly well in the Shires. It never usually does. So if it has a bad night, it will say it will be expected. But the Conservative Party really has to do well to show that Kemi Badenoch's leadership is working, but also Reform has to do particularly well, just to prove that it really does have that momentum, that all these extra people who are joining it, it's translating across the country and people are wanting Reform.
And when you look at the other papers this morning, the Daily Mail, so much for cutting our energy bills, the energy price cap going up. The fact is that private schools back on the front page this morning of the Daily Telegraph. These are all things that the Labour Party has enacted. But when you read an article by a friend of this programme, Gawain Towler, he says that actually Reform UK, in terms of the polling, first past the post has always been difficult for small parties, whether it's the Lib Dems, whether it's the Greens, whether it's Reform UK. But there reaches a tipping point where suddenly you see a change, so that Reform UK may well be at that swing point where under first past the post, and I will quote from him, if Reform keep their upward trajectory, a mere 6-point rise in the polling would, under first past the post, make them the largest party with 200 seats. So we're now at a very interesting inflection point under our current system.
Yes, we are. I mean, first past the post giveth and it also taketh away. And the old Conservative Party in Canada 30 years ago found that one out to its cost, where it was the party of government and went down to, I think, was it 2 or 3 seats. I mean, first past the post can be utterly brutal. And it is possible that Reform will reach that tipping point. I mean, I know Gwyn very well. I found it an interesting article. I mean, he was also talking about the House of Lords and how the House of Lords will probably try and block absolutely everything that a hypothetical Reform government would do, and that they would be then in favour, Labour and Conservatives would be in favour of proportional representation because it would be in their interests. But then I'm still not quite sure that would happen. I'm probably one of the few people inside the Conservative Party who actually does believe in electoral reform. I've slowly come there over the years. I think when you have a government elected with 2/3 of the seats with a little over 1/3 of the vote, then something is clearly not working. But whether electoral reform will happen, I think it's something we could be talking about this in 5 years' time, David. We could be talking about in 10 years' time, 15, 20 years' time, and still nothing may have happened.
And of course, just very quickly, if I may, finally, Andrew, immigration is the big I suppose the biggest concern to people in this country, and I can tell you now a total of 36,816 migrants crossed the English Channel to the United Kingdom in 2024. That is up 25% on 2023, according to provisional government figures which have just been released. The Conservative Party failed to get on top of immigration. The Labour Party has failed to get on top of immigration despite the rhetoric. They obviously got rid of the Rwanda policy as well. And of course, this is where Reform UK does very well. Can the Conservative Party turn this around?
I think the Conservative Party can. I think that Kemi really just needs to have more action here. As I said before, we know what our principles are. We can come up with various positions without going into the minutiae of the policy. The Conservative Party completely failed on immigration, and we really do need to offer more fulsome apologies about that. We're talking about illegal immigration there, which of course is appallingly high, and we don't really know the people that we're bringing into the country either. But legal immigration is just completely and utterly unsustainable. We simply don't have the housing, we don't have the public services that can cope with that. And Sir Keith Joseph, back in the 1970s, used to talk about the common ground. He said the centre ground doesn't exist. It's the common ground. The common ground amongst the British people now is that immigration is way too high and it has to be sorted. And if Labour doesn't sort it, it's going to fail spectacularly at the polls. But equally, if the Conservative Party doesn't come up with something that will solve this problem and come up with some firm promises that it's going to deliver, it's going to suffer at the polls. And because the only party that's really going to benefit from that is Reform.
Really good to talk to you, Andrew. I wish you a very happy New Year. Andrew Allison, the head of campaigns at Pop.